Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. I've got a question for you right off the bat. When do you truly feel happy? I mean, not just sort of pleased for a moment, but like deeply, fully engaged. When time just seems to vanish, that feeling. That's exactly what we're digging into today.
Yeah, it's a really profound human experience, isn't it?
Mm.
Often feels elusive, but it's something researchers have spent decades trying to get a handle on.
And we're going right to, well, one of the key sources today. We're exploring decades of research on the positive side of things, joy, creativity, total involvement with life. Our main guide here is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's groundbreaking book, Flow. It's basically his big work distilling all these studies on what he calls flow.
Right. And just to be clear, our mission here isn't like giving you a five-step recipe for happiness. That doesn't really work, does it? A joyful life is, well, it's something you create uniquely. It's personal. Instead, what we'll do is unpack the general principles and look at some really compelling examples, examples of how people, ordinary folks, and maybe some extraordinary ones too, have turned lives that might seem mundane or even meaningless into something deeply satisfying.
Exactly. Think of this as us handing you a toolkit, maybe. Something to help you reflect and, draw your own conclusions about improving your own quality of life.
So let's start right there. What exactly is this optimal experience? What is flow?
Okay, so flow. It refers to those moments, maybe rare moments for some, when you feel completely absorbed, you're totally in control of what you're doing, almost like you're effortlessly mastering your own fate, in that moment at least. And it leads to this really deep sense of joy, fulfillment. It almost sounds a bit mystical, but the examples make it really concrete, don't they? Like, imagine a sailor, right? Hands tied on the ropes, feeling the wind, the boat, the sea, all kind of singing through their veins. They become one with it all.
Exactly. Or think about a painter, lost in the work. The colors on the canvas start to connect. There's this magnetic tension, and suddenly a new form emerges. It feels like it's happening through them almost. Or even something deeply human, like a parent seeing their child's very first responsive smile.
Yeah.
That connection. These are all moments where you're just completely, utterly immersed.
Yeah, and here's what I found really surprising. Flow isn't just for when things are good. The research actually found instances where people in really extreme situations, like in concentration camps, they experience these intense epiphanies. Simple things, hearing a bird sing, sharing a bit of bread, could trigger these incredibly rich moments. It really shows that this optimal experience isn't, just for comfortable times.
That's a powerful point. And this idea, this concept of flow, it's not just theory locked away in books anymore. It's being used all over the world. Psychology, sociology, anthropology. It's inspiring things like experimental school programs, business training, even designing leisure activities and therapies, all aimed at, basically, improving the quality of life in practical ways.
Okay, so the evidence is there, the concept is powerful. But then there's the big question, the paradox, right? If we kind of understand these peak experiences, why does genuine, sustained happiness still feel so elusive for so many of us?
I mean, a lot of it seems to come down to a basic misunderstanding. We often chase after things like wealth, power, status,
Mm.
pleasures that are often genetically programmed. Their instincts really built for species survival,
Mm.
not necessarily for deep individual enjoyment. True fulfillment, this research strongly suggests, comes from having direct control over our moment-to-moment experience. That's the core of it.
Ah, okay. So our basic wiring might point us towards survival, maybe status, but not necessarily that deep happiness. And culture sometimes play into this too. They try to give us these shields, like belief systems, to protect us from chaos. But if we put too much faith in those shields and then they fail, it can lead to, well, huge disillusionment.
Precisely. You see it historically, the Romans, the Chinese dynasties, the Aztecs, confidence in their cultural shields, then collapse and disillusionment. And even today, right, in our modern world with all the science and technology, comfort's unimaginable to past emperors. Many people in the so-called first world are still deeply unsatisfied. That promise that, a richer, more advanced world automatically brings happiness, it often falls flat. It's like we get caught on this hamster wheel of rising expectations, always needing more, but never feeling more satisfied.
That probably explains why the quick fixes often fail then. Things like diets or certain self-help fads, maybe even cosmetic surgery. They might address a symptom, maybe, but not that underlying need for control over our own consciousness. The real leverage seems to be internal.
It really does seem to be. The research points towards this kind of internal drama, you could say. You've got yourself trying to manage your genuine needs, but it's often in conflict with the unconscious, which is really serving your genes. And the superego, which is sort of society's voice in your head, it's a crowded inner landscape.
And it's fascinating how some traditions recognized this ages ago, like Eastern disciplines, yoga, Taoism, Zen. They developed these really sophisticated techniques specifically to free consciousness from those biological urges and social pressures. The whole aim is inner liberation, isn't it?
Absolutely. Think of a yogi learning to ignore pain or hunger. It's about mastering that inner world. And this underlines a really crucial point. We can make ourselves happy or miserable pretty much regardless of what's happening outside, simply by changing the contents of our consciousness. That ability to persevere, to reframe a terrible situation as a challenge you can tackle, that's a quality people really admire.
So if we think about consciousness in terms of like information, it's not just passively recording things, it's more like an active editor. Selecting, arranging information based on our intentions, shaping how we see reality.
Exactly. Our intentions, whether they're basic needs like hunger or goals we've absorbed from society, they act like magnetic fields. They organize all the incoming information, and crucially, they focus our attention. And our attention is surprisingly limited.
Yeah, it really is limited, isn't it? Like, think about driving on a highway. There's so much going on, billboards, other cars, the road, but you're consciously registering only a tiny fraction. Then a car suddenly swerves towards you. Instantly, you drop your phone or stop thinking about dinner, your mind just zeroes in. There's definitely a limit, like that magical number idea, to what we can handle consciously at once.
And it creates this feedback loop, too, where you direct your attention actually shapes your personality over time. Take Csikszentmihalyi's example of Sam. He accidentally stumbles into marine biology, gets fascinated, puts his attention there. That sustained attention builds his expertise, his passion, it becomes part of his personality. And then his personality guides where he directs his attention next. It keeps building.
Okay, so that's ordered consciousness. What about the opposite? You mentioned psychic entropy disorder. Is that just like mental noise, feeling scattered?
Yeah, it's when conflicting information or distractions or worries disrupt your intentions. It leads to feelings like pain, fear, anxiety. It makes your psychic energy feel rigid, stuck, ineffective. Think of Julio, the factory worker in the book. A flat tire ruins his whole day. It makes him irritable, unable to focus. Or Jim, whose divorce felt like the end of the world, nearly destroying him. The key insight is that the external event itself, the flat tire, the divorce, is neutral, technically, in our personality's interpretation and how we handle the information that dictates its impact.
Wow, okay, this really sets the stage for understanding the core research then. The elements of enjoyment, the building blocks of flow. Csikszentmihalyi's team, they interviewed thousands of people, right? From all walks of life, climbers, composers, surgeons, factory workers, even blind nuns, asking them about those moments when life felt absolutely at its peak.
That's right. And the amazing thing was, despite all the different activities, how they described that feeling, that flow, was remarkably similar. One absolutely key element was having clear goals and getting immediate feedback. Doesn't matter if it's tennis, where you see if the ball lands in, or music composition, where you hear if the notes work together. You need to know right now if you're succeeding. He mentioned surgeons often find flow because the patient's body gives constant, clear feedback like, is there bleeding in the incision, yes or no? Very direct.
Right. And another piece is that balance, isn't it, between the challenge of the task and your own skill level. It has to be in that sweet spot. Not so easy you get bored, but not so hard you get anxious and overwhelmed. It's a dynamic balance.
Yeah, like that great example of the dog, Hussar, playing fetch. The dog instinctively adjusts the difficulty, letting the owner almost catch the stick, then darting away to keep the game optimally enjoyable for both of them. It knows how to find that balance.
And then there's the sheer intensity of focus.
Oh, absolutely. Total concentration. Your mind isn't wandering off to your grocery list or that awkward conversation yesterday. You were in it. Here's that quote from a chess player. The ceiling could fall, and if it did not fall right on top of you, you would not even notice. That's absorption.
Okay, and what about the self-consciousness part? The idea that your ego kind of disappears.
Yes, that's a really common report. People feel like they merge with the activity or the environment. The climber feels one with the rock, the sailor one with the sea and wind. Even members of a Japanese motorcycle gang described feeling united with the machine, the group, the road, a sense of expanded self, paradoxically, by losing the narrow sense of self.
That's the paradox, isn't it? Losing yourself but somehow coming out stronger. How does that work?
Well, the research suggests this temporary loss of self-consciousness, this deep engagement, actually leads to a stronger, more complex, more enriched sense of self after the flow experience is over. It's not passive zoning out. It's an active, skilled engagement that builds you up, even if you're not consciously aware of the building while it's happening.
And time gets weird too, right?
Definitely. Time perception warps. Hours can feel like minutes. Or sometimes, in moments requiring intense precision, seconds can feel stretched out. And finally, maybe the most defining characteristic, flow activities are autotelic.
Autotelic, meaning?
Meaning the activity is its own reward. You're doing it for the sheer sake of doing it, not primarily for some external payoff like money or fame. Think of a child completely lost in building a sandcastle.
Yeah.
That's pure autotelic experience. The joy is in the doing.
Okay, got it. So knowing all these components, how do we actually bring more of this into our everyday lives? I mean, some things seem designed for flow, like sports, games, art, even religious rituals. They often have built-in rules, goals, feedback.
That's true. They provide a structure. But what's really surprising from the research is how often people find flow at work, often more frequently than during passive leisure, like, say, watching TV. Watching TV almost never produces flow. It's too passive. Which brings us to this idea of the autotelic worker, like Joe, the welder in the factory.
Joe's story is amazing. Here's a guy with a repetitive, frankly kind of inhuman job on an assembly line, and he transforms it. He sets himself little challenges like timing his welds, trying to make each one perfect, finding ways to make it engaging. He even turned his backyard into this complex, flow-inducing project with, like, homemade sprinklers making rainbows. His whole approach to life, his quality of experience, was just worlds apart from his colleagues who just wanted to clock out and numb themselves.
Exactly. It shows the power of internal reframing. And it's not just work. We can transform how we use our bodies, our senses. Our bodies have this incredible, often untapped potential for enjoyment. It's about learning to move with skill, to see things with an artist's perception, to taste food like a gourmet. The mind has to be involved.
Right. Even something as basic as walking, you can turn it into a flow activity, set goals, distance, speed, navigating tricky terrain. Measure your progress, develop skills like balance or efficient stride, raise the challenges, like hiking a difficult mountain path. You're constantly focused, adjusting, reading the terrain. That's intense flow right there.
And Csikszentmihalyi even talks about sex in this context. While it's obviously programmed for pleasure to keep it a deeply enjoyable, lifelong flow experience, it needs more than just the physical act. It requires continuous new challenges, exploring deeper intimacy, romance, genuine affection. Otherwise, it can become routine, even boring.
And the same goes for our senses, like hearing versus listening.
Precisely. Hearing is passive, sound just comes in. Listening is active. It requires directing your attention. Take music. You can just have it on in the background. Or you can listen analytically, compare different recordings of the same piece, follow the bass line, dissect the harmonies. That creates flow, deep enjoyment. Yet musical education, learning how to listen, is often neglected. Same with eating. Transform the biological need into a rich experience by paying attention, developing a discerning palate, maybe even exploring cooking as an art. Mindful eating.
Okay, so physical and sensory flow. What about purely mental flow?
Absolutely. Reading is probably one of the most common flow activities worldwide. Getting lost in a book. Mental puzzles, crosswords, Sudoku, they all fit the bill. But here's an interesting one. Memory. The power of memory. Memorizing things, family history, scientific facts, poetry, scriptures used to be a really prized skill. It was seen as a way to order consciousness, to find delight in knowledge structured in the mind. Now, it's often dismissed, right? We can just look everything up. But maybe we've lost something valuable there. The act of choosing what you genuinely want to remember and holding it in your mind can be a flow activity.
And just thinking, the act of thinking itself.
Yes. The great thinkers throughout history often found their deepest enjoyment simply in the process of thinking, of figuring things out. Remember Democritus, the ancient Greek philosopher. He supposedly said, "I would rather discover a single causal explanation than gain the kingdom of Persia." That's someone who found flow in pure thought.
It also makes you think about the words amateur and dilettante.
Right, they've sort of got negative connotations now, but their original meanings are beautiful. An amateur is simply one who loves what they do, from Latin amare, to love. A dilettante is one who takes delight in an activity, from Italian dilettare to delight. It encourages us to focus on the quality of the experience itself, not just on external achievement or professional status.
Okay, this is all very inspiring for everyday life, but let's tackle the tough question. What about when things go really wrong? When life deals you a terrible hand? Can flow, can this internal control truly matter in the face of extreme suffering or adversity? Some people listening might be skeptical.
It's a fair question, and the research actually provides some of the most powerful examples right here. Individuals who didn't just survive, but found harmony, even grew in personal complexity in the absolute direst circumstances.
This is that transformational coping you mentioned.
Exactly. Think of Christopher Burney, the British officer imprisoned by the Nazis in solitary confinement. Awful conditions. He turned it into a subjective challenge. He'd meticulously measure his bed, analyze the cracks in the wall, calculate the cell's volume, study the routines of the guards. He focused his attention on what he could observe and analyze within that grim system, making it a mental game, keeping his mind ordered.
Or Eva Zeisel, the designer imprisoned by Stalin's secret police in Lubyanka. She kept her sanity, she said, by mentally designing a new bra, playing chess against herself in her head, composing poems, finding ways to structure her consciousness.
It's an incredible display of the mind's ability to create order and find purpose internally, even when the external world is chaos. And the mechanism seems to be about shifting attention, away from just worrying about yourself, your fear, your discomfort, and instead directing it outwards, even towards the source of the threat, but in an analytical way. Engaging with the system, whether it's a prison or an illness, to understand it, find patterns, find ways to adapt or exert some small control. It's the opposite of being fixated in panic, like that tragic story of the American parachutist in the Korean War. His chute malfunctioned. He couldn't find the ripcord for the reserve chute in his usual spot. He panicked, kept fumbling where it should have been, and fell to his death. Even though the ripcord was just inches away on the other side due to a packing variation, he couldn't shift his focus.
So people who can make that mental shift, who can reframe threats as challenges, they have what Csikszentmihalyi calls the autotelic personality.
That's the idea. It's the ability to readily translate potential threats or difficult situations into enjoyable challenges, maintaining that inner harmony. A key feature is that their goals tend to come from within. They're not primarily driven by external rewards or pressures. He contrasts, for instance, a lawyer attending the unveiling of a new Picasso sculpture. The lawyer immediately starts thinking about potential lawsuits, zoning violations, public safety risks. His focus is external, professional, maybe even anxious. Compare that to someone with a more autotelic approach, who might engage with the sculpture's artistic merit, its place in the community, the engineering challenges, finding enjoyment and complexity in multiple dimensions, driven by internal curiosity.
It's like that analogy of the artist and the canvas.
Exactly. A truly original artist doesn't start with a fully formed, rigid plan. They might have a feeling, an intention, but they respond to what emerges on the canvas. The first brushstroke changes the possibilities for the second. Similarly, an autotelic person approaches life with that openness, evaluating experiences based on their direct impact, on the potential for growth and enjoyment, not just based on preconceived notions or external expectations.
This is all incredibly powerful for dealing with challenges and finding enjoyment, but the book argues there's still one more crucial layer, right? Something missing.
Yes. Even if you have lots of flow experiences enjoying your work, your hobbies, your relationships, it might still feel fragmented, disconnected. The final piece of the puzzle, according to the research, is meaning. A larger, overarching purpose that connects all these individual flow activities and integrates them into a unified life experience.
Meaning, okay, what does that entail exactly?
Well, meaning itself has a few related senses here. First, it's about having a purpose, feeling like what you do is important. Second, it's about having personal intention, directing your psychic energy deliberately. And third, it's about making sense of things, finding order in the information of your life. Essentially, creating meaning involves bringing order to your consciousness by integrating all your actions into one overarching flow experience, guided by a chosen purpose.
And this unifying purpose, it acts like that magnetic field again, organizing your energy, defining what challenges are worth pursuing, giving a sense of transcendence almost.
Precisely. It elevates your life beyond just a series of enjoyable moments. Now, the content of that purpose raises interesting questions. Consider Napoleon and Mother Teresa. From a purely psychological standpoint, both likely had incredibly strong unifying purposes that ordered their consciousness and probably led to intense flow experiences. Yet their impacts on the world were vastly different. It leaves you, the listener, to ponder the ethical dimension of the purpose you choose.
So the meaning of life is meaning itself.
In a way, yes. That's the surprisingly simple yet profound conclusion. Whatever that unifying purpose is for you, the very act of having one is what gives life meaning and integrates experience. And finding that purpose is often a journey. It might start with goals programmed by genetics or society, but then it moves towards conscious personal choice. Then, hopefully that choice leads to activities you deeply enjoy, flow, And ultimately, you might integrate your personal purpose with something larger than yourself, a cause, an idea, humanity, maybe even a transcendent entity.
And often these really powerful life themes, these purposes, emerge from hardship, don't they? But it's about the interpretation.
Absolutely key. It's not the suffering itself, but how you make sense of it. Like E, the man in the book whose tragic accident led him to dedicate his life to legal advocacy for the poor.
Mm.
Or Gottfried, whose mother died of cancer, inspiring him to become a dedicated cancer researcher. They found meaning in response to adversity.
And finding this purpose, building this meaning, we don't have to do it from scratch. We can draw on existing wisdom.
Definitely. Csikszentmihalyi stresses the importance of using the ordered information that culture has accumulated over millennia, philosophy, art, religion, scientific knowledge. These are like blueprints for creating harmony out of chaos. Don't try to reinvent the wheel entirely. Look for models, for inspiration. Mentors, historical figures, great works of literature, they provide invaluable guidance.
Like that amazing example he gives of using Dante's Divine Comedy with modern business executives.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Helping them navigate their midlife crises by reflecting on Dante's journey out of a dark wood towards purpose and meaning. It just shows how timeless and relevant this accumulated cultural wisdom can be. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, the core message seems to be,
That while your external circumstances absolutely play a role, your fundamental ability to experience joy, to find flow, to build meaning, it ultimately rests on your internal choices, on how you cultivate and direct your own consciousness. Right. The world throws chaos at us, endless choices, pressures. The task isn't necessarily to eliminate all that chaos. Maybe it's impossible, but it's about learning to, to swim in it, maybe, to find your own internal compass, your own skills for navigating, and to forge a purpose that not only brings order to your own mind, but maybe, just maybe, enriches the lives of others too. So the question we leave you with is, what steps will you take starting today to bring more flow, more conscious engagement, and perhaps more purpose into your daily existence? Something to reflect on. Thank you so much for joining us on The Deep Dive.